Namaste and welcome everyone. Glad to have you here again this week for episode 3 of The Invitation, chapter 4, Time for a Lighter Course. It's time for a slight break on the seemingly heavier bill of fare, says Waldo, so I'll introduce you to Mark Twain and leave you in his care as you prepare your palate with a lovely sorbet. Here he is by the fireplace. Mark, my dear old friend, meet your newest companions, Penelope and Christo. They've been known to engage in some chicanery, so I thought you'd be good company for one another for a while. The next course isn't quite ready, so take your time. Ta-ta! It's nice to finally meet you face to face, Mark greets them. Namaste, Christo and Penelope greet Mark, along with now familiar hugs. And just why do you use that particular greeting, Mark asks. Well, to us, begins Penelope, the greeting Namaste says right out in front that from our position of divinity we honor and celebrate the divinity you are. You mean the divinity in me, don't you, Mark clarifies. No, we mean what I've said. To say that divinity is only in you is to escape the reality of life. That is the profound truth that all is divine, not just parts of it. And when we begin with that understanding, inserts Christo, we treat both others and ourselves with the utmost respect for the dignity we each deserve. And what about those delicious hugs, Mark asks. Here again, informs Penelope, this is a sign of absolute reverence for one another. We like the idea that a hug is an unmistakable print of love that seals a relationship with trust. Oh, I like that, Mark declares. No wonder your reputation has preceded you, you two. Mark shows his obvious pleasure, and the two honorees open still further to his company. I've been enjoying your engagement with piercing humor from time to time. Most people don't think the way I do, and that is expressing profound ideas through their unexpected portrayal. As far as I'm concerned, it's just plain fun. Well, I'm confident that I speak for both of us when I say that we have long admired you and your way of presenting life to others, Christo says. Yes, you have a right to be confident, for I too resonate with what Mr. Clemens here has to say, Penelope affirms. Well, Penelope, you know me better than most, for Samuel Clemens is my real name, but I sure have gotten a lot of mileage out of Mark Twain. It keeps some people confused and off balance. It's funny that my commentaries often seem to fit that same characterization, off balance. At least that's what I've often accused of, keeping people off balance. But you know, a man cannot be comfortable without his own approval. Nor can a man be more truthful than when he calls himself a liar. He concludes with a laugh. We've discussed the idea of gaining affirmation and validation from inner authority rather than from anyone else, says Penelope. It seems like many folks look to the outside affirmation and validation for their journey, rather than what rings true to them within, that really is for their highest good. All we know that is found only within, at the seat of our divinity. Yes, responds Twain. Well, you know, I'm sure that a lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is putting on its shoes. It takes so long sometimes for truth to find the light of day, especially in the days in which you now live. In my days, it was difficult enough, but at least we didn't have to worry about or be bombarded by the proliferation of so-called technological advancements. Not that they are in and of themselves bad, but unfortunately the greater wisdom has not ruled the day. Convenience and the drive for power and wealth have. Sometimes I think that civilization is a limitless multiplication of unnecessary necessities. Don't you think so? Christo and Penelope laugh at Mark's clever iteration. Then Christo joins the conversation. Oh, that's a good one. A good one. A limitless multiplication of unnecessary necessities. We're all so much in a hurry to go absolutely nowhere, and yet when we arrive, we haven't even a vague notion of where we are or how to behave. We're always giving in to external measures of happiness, and yet when exercised, we always end up not being happy at all. Isn't that because people are looking in the wrong places for happiness? Penelope inquires. The only way I can find happiness is by following the still small voice I find speaking within me. When I am obedient to that, instead of running around trying endlessly to fulfill some ego need, I find happiness without fail. As a matter of fact, I feel as though my innate, most natural state is happiness, of being joyful. Apparently there's nothing that cannot happen today, Mark comments. That certainly is the claim, and to a degree that is true. But what good is the claim if what happens is not for higher good, asks Penelope. From where I sit, many people go off helter-skelter, without paying any attention to the seed of their divinity, none whatsoever. It makes me think that most don't even know they are divine, or that they can access truth inwardly. Now that would spark some great controversy, Mark poses, and you know how well people handle controversy. After all, a person with a new idea, although what you're suggesting is not new, Penelope, but rather an age-old treatise about truth being personified, a person with a new idea is a crank until the idea succeeds. And what you're asking is for society to exercise something most haven't even been exposed to. Even if they have, it makes them too uncomfortable to even think about setting aside old, comfortable ways of thinking about themselves and life in general. True, posits Christo, but we must begin somewhere, and that somewhere is with us. We must teach it both by exposition and by example. If enough of us do, then one day this sacred purpose will gather steam and begin to take over the minds of mankind. That's a nice thought, Christo. Just don't get too far ahead of yourself and think that it will happen immediately. A round man cannot be expected to fit in a square hole right away. He must have time to modify his shape, after all, Mark says with a wry smile crossing his lips. And besides, he quickly warns Christo, few things are harder to put up with than the annoyance of a good example. Oh, I don't know that one, Christo says. For us, that is good news. In this way, Penelope and I are cut from familiar bolt of cloth, the wearing of which does indeed annoy the complacent mortal mind. When we see annoyance show its face, it lights up our own in the understanding that some truth has disturbed the complacent from its hardened view, at least on some level, and for some time. Christo fades off into inner knowing. Very cleverly spoken, Mark, Penelope says admiringly, sliding past Christo's comment for a moment. But you did your part, Mark, and in a very real sense you still are, just that everyone who is at all aware about real life does their part. Sure, you didn't change the entire world, but you have inspired many to change the way they view life, and to a large degree that is carried forward. Other aware and awake individuals also have contributed in similar fashion, and slowly but surely, conversation is taking hold on these issues. This is what Christo is referring to when he says that it pleases us to see the complacent moved even slightly from their hardened view of life. We all have our part to play in this realm, and I appreciate the nudges you give in this regard. You know, you too, Christo returns from his journey into truth. Just since we began this conversation, I have been awakened to the truth that even though people of considerable character have left this realm of being, that what they taught and inspired others to think and do is coming around again and again to inform and inspire. For example, the works of Rumi and Hafiz are still circling the globe and inspiring the minds and changing the hearts of millions. Your own writings, Mark, are doing the very same. Of course, being the rascal you are, has taken some of your writings to new heights, ranking some of the more conservative thinkers, and there are many still. Yes, this is the good news, Mark says, because without such controversy, the writings might well languish on the darkest, dank shelves of some of the libraries in schools and townships. Indeed, now as way back then, I welcome controversy. And besides, those who rail against such literature, thought now to be classics, by the way, don't do society any good other than stirring the curiosity of those who probably wouldn't have read such selections without being stirred up. And besides, you know what makes a book a classic, don't you? No, what is it that makes a book classic? Penelope takes the bait. A classic, Mark says dutifully, is a book which people praise and don't read. The illustrious trio joins in laughter at Mark's self-deprecating humor. But then again, I suppose that's better than reading a biography. Penelope bites again, jostling Mark to continue his special brand of wisdom. Why is that, Mark? Come on, Penelope, surely you know why, Mark says, not waiting for Penelope to venture a response. That's because biographies are but the clothes and buttons of a man. The biography of a man himself cannot be written. That is so true, agrees Penelope. What people think of a person is most often judged by the clothes one wears, the material clothes, instead of the inspirations we clothe our lives with, and the degree of authentic love for mankind we express. And most of all, whether we live by the truth we find within, rather than following the dictates of others just to gain favor and advantage. You have it, precisely, Penelope, Mark affirms. You can't tell a book by its cover. He adds then, and to get back to our earlier conversation about books, what such limited thinkers need to understand is that a person who won't read has no advantage over one who can't read. The ignorance in which we find ourselves is identical in character, one to the other. It's laughable, really, Christo rejoins, if it weren't so sad. Perhaps that's the way to assault this kind of censorship, to make it so laughable as to render censorship powerless. Ha, you are brilliant, Christo, says Mark, laughing loudly to himself. Thank you, Christo says modestly, but why do you say that? Well, Christo, your comment is brilliant because it agrees with me. Against the assault of laughter, nothing can stand. Okay then, Penelope, I guess we'll just have to let the truth guide us in the direction of laughter for a while and see where that takes us, Christo says laughingly. Sounds good to me, Penelope prods, and perhaps we can convince Mark to assist us. She directs her comment in Mark's direction. I have already helped you, he says. All you have to do is use a few well-chosen quotes from some of my writings and ads about reading, and you get all the tension around controversy shifted in the direction of good. There's enough truth and humor there to catch even the most ardent conservative heart. This is a bit scary, but I know we can do it, says Penelope. Do the thing you fear the most, and death of fear is certain. Mark says in return, and courage is resistance to fear, mastery of fear, not absence of fear. Do we ever know that one, Penelope says. Actually, I'd say it a little differently, though, without disrespect to you, Mark. I say that it takes courage to face fear, but obedience or surrender to truth in order to walk through fear. Then we find the next layer of truth on fear's other side. Now who's the clever one, Mark says with a supportive smile. Just then they become aware of a conversation nearby between Maya Angelou and Margaret Fuller, herself a transcendentalist and Waldo's companion. They're catching only the last remnants of the conversation, but are captivated nevertheless. They hear Maya sharing the last few lines of her poem, Phenomenal Women, and realize that she and Margaret are having a conversation on the special nature of women. Men themselves have wondered what they see in me. They try so much, but they can't teach my inner mystery. When I try to show them, they say I still can't see. I say it's the arch of my back, the sun of my smile, the ride of my breast, the grace of my style. I'm a woman, phenomenal woman. That's me. Now you understand just why my head's not bowed. I don't shout or jump about or have to talk real loud. And when you see me passing, it ought to make you proud. I say it's the click of my heels, the bend of my hair, the palm of my hand, the need of my care. 'Cause I'm a woman phenomenal woman. That's me. Maya smiles knowingly toward Margaret as she finishes and says, well, that's one way I used to awaken some to the special characteristics of woman. And of course, this is just one example of how I follow the journey that is laid out for me as the truth of my walk. Yes, I see that clearly in you, affirms Margaret. We all have our paths to follow. In this regard, Maya, I see male and female representing two sides of the great radical dualism. But in fact, they are perpetually passing into one another. Fluid hardens into solid, solid rushes to fluid. There is no wholly masculine man, no purely feminine woman. Oh, I agree wholeheartedly, Maya says. It's just that in today's society, I wouldn't get anywhere telling either a man or a woman that in the same way you've expressed it. It would be such a turnoff for them that they'd never listen to another word from me on the topic. That could be a trade-off, Margaret says in return. Perhaps a temporary jolt of such a declaration would be a turnoff, as you put it. But as long as the seed has been planted, it will grow, even if the soil is not yet wholly fertile or the water not present. I see your point, Margaret. Perhaps a combination of your way and mine would be the way to go. It could be, but only if such a combination fits what you are guided to do from within. Me saying this or that has nothing whatsoever to do with truth for you, unless it resonates as truth for you. So by all means, be careful. I just want to suggest that you might be overlooking a way of jostling people from complacency, that's all. I hear you loud and clear, Margaret, and thank you for that reminder. I do walk from the resonance of my own truth in large part, which is why there's been so much impact with both the meaning and style of what I live. Boy, you can say that again, Penelope says to Mark and Christo. Maya certainly has rocked the boat, and yet at the same time, she has disarmed the seemingly disarmable with her charm and spiritual acuity. She certainly has, Christo readily agrees. And I have often thought that it would be better for her to come out with the absolute truth about masculine and feminine character. But lately I've come to the conclusion that each of us is to follow love's way only in our own unique command of that style. This way, those who need to hear truth said that way, the way Maya conveys it, will do so. Those who need to hear it the way Mark does it will also do so. In this way, potentially at least, all will have been served as they must. On principle, I think I agree with you, Christo, says Mark. But in particular, what do you mean with respect to the truth about the masculine and feminine? Well, when we look at the effects of the masculine or feminine character, begins Christo, we focus on the effect or appearance of something rather than its foundation or first cause. When we focus on ego consciousness or superficial effect, we see man or woman as separate from one another and us, and vastly different in character. As a matter of truth, the meaning of masculine and feminine is found in the characteristics found within each of us, rendered as perfection when balanced in us. In this way, we are viewing life from the truth exposed by consciousness, or the absolute perception of life. As such, it has no such characteristics. The only characteristics of life is life's essence, which is unbound or unlimited by any characteristics other than those attributed to loving personified through each of us. Thus, in reality, we are neither male nor female, people who are white or black, Roman Catholic or Jew, gay or straight, and so on. We are, quite simply, bottom line, loving essence expressed through the appearance of you and me. When we come to see life only through the lenses of our common divinity, then it is the ultimate expression of divinity that rules all, and all other distinctions are unveiled as the illusions they are. Penelope adds, thus we have erased the specter of prejudice and the cause for judgment against anyone or anything. When we see with the eyes of God, we are one, and as God, we surely are one. I know that by declaring this truth, some people will suggest that its premise is nothing but a form of elitist prejudice. Rather, I would posit that it is the height of vanity to declare ourselves as separate from God or one another for any reason. If we look at this declaration of oneness more carefully, we will see no appearance of any kind, white or black, tall or short, old or young, gay or straight. Words affords us any real opportunity to distinguish one from the other. Each person, no matter what outward characteristic one displays, simply is the full, complete, and wonderful essence of God. Therefore, appearance, while making mortal life interesting, even fun, is rendered but the illusion it is. At least in a spiritual or metaphysical mediation, this is the truth of life. This is not to say that one's unique individuation of his common essence isn't to be celebrated. It's to say that we celebrate the differences in appearance, not simply because of difference, but because we're honoring each as the essence of one and all. A simple analogy might help. Our country is thought to be grand by some because we are the so-called melting pot of the world, assimilating all heritages as ours, American. A way of putting it is that we need to celebrate our country as the epitome of the stew pot, not the melting pot. This way each retains his or her individual flavor or unique quality, while at the same time contributing to the overall flavor or truth of our oneness. Boy, I sure am glad I asked you about this, acknowledges Mark, because while I have this same meaning coursing through me, I would have never had the words to put it this way. Yet in my very own I have said these things. Oh yes, Mark, Penelope hastens to respond. That surely is so, and I hope you didn't take our explanation to mean that we thought you did not know or express this truth as your life. Oh no, not at all, says Mark with all sincerity. Actually, though, your explanation did awaken me to the absolute connection between our separate but similar ways, truth expressed. Besides, he said jokingly yet again, I don't like to commit myself about heaven and hell. You see, I have friends in both places. Ha, interjects Waldo jokingly to himself. I can see that I've arrived just in time to save you two from Mark's perverted sense of humor. More seriously, I know that you've enjoyed each other's company, so it pains me some to suggest that we move on to the next course. Well, begins Mark, if that's the way you feel about it, then by all means, take leave. I'll find some other company, but hardly more charming or brilliant than these two. Despite your questionable character, Mark, Waldo rejoins, still with a playful spirit, you are still a man of impeccable taste, or you wouldn't have participated tonight as brilliantly as you have with our guest. Thank you for that. You're entirely welcome, dear friend, and the pleasure isn't all mine, I'm sure. Mark ends the conversation with a last singer to the delight of one and all. Yes, the pleasure isn't all mine, I'm sure. All right then, dear friends, let me take you to the next table for the pasta entry now that you've tasted the antipasto. We hope to see you later, Penelope says with a tinge of sadness in her voice, and thank you for the sterling conversation, she concludes. Ditto for me, Christo echoes her sentiments. The very same for me, you two, and Penelope, you'll see me anytime you wish, Mark says in conclusion, causing her heart to stir in wonderness. So that was chapter 4, the end of episode 3 of the invitation. We'll move on to chapter 5, the next episode, a week from now. I hope you will stay well and happy. Call your friends to listen to these. Listen to them with you. It'll be a nice foundation for chatting about these topics, about exploring where you are with any of this information or wisdom that strikes you as wisdom. It'll be fun. Try it. You'll like it, I'm sure. So as you know, I like to close with a little post that I've seen between our weeks together, and I close with this one. Life became a lot simpler when I decided just to let some people misunderstand me. So there, let yourself be misunderstood, my friends. Have a wonderful week. Stay well and happy. Namaste. I love you.